And welcome everyone. This is the final session of Journal Play 4 with our wonderful instructor, Beverly Army-Williams. I am so glad that you folks attended this series. It's been really exciting, beyond my expectations. Beverly's been fantastic. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over because I know she has a lot planned for you today. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Holly, and thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate it. So I'm just putting in the prompt in the chat, the prompt that I'm asking you now, just to check in if anybody did any journaling since last week and anything you'd like to share about your experience, maybe what prompts you tried if you had the time to do that. So if you are interested in responding to that, just go ahead and unmute and share.
I've been working on the memory stuff. That's just huge for me. I'm just remembering, I'm beginning to have dreams, and not sure I want to write everything down that I'm dreaming. And which brings another topic, which we can save it for later or not. It's just like, as a chronic journaler, Beverly, how do you organize your stuff so that you can use it later? And you can, put that aside or respond to it later, whatever, because I've always had trouble.
Let's talk about that at the end. And if I don't remember because it's not on my agenda, please remind me, and I'll share a little bit about what I do.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks. So today I am going to talk about 4 different journal approaches you can take, and I have a slideshow for you. So I will just share my screen. And you all can see the slide just fine? Okay. So the first kind of journal that I want to talk about is the Commonplace Book. And a Commonplace Book, in the most simple of terms, is a place to compile knowledge. It's different from a journal in that it's often a repository of passages or ideas from other writers that the owner of the book finds thought-provoking. It can be organized like this index card sample. It can be more random. It's most often in a book. There are no rules. Of course, it's yours. This Commonplace Book from James Blake demonstrates the keeper working out ideas. So we see sketches as well as other information. So another approach is to have the Commonplace Book be a research repository. And you can see you could use a 3-ring binder to keep your Commonplace Book if you wanted to include ephemera, printouts of quotes, things like that. So these books have been kept since antiquity. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations began as a Commonplace Book, and John Milton kept one, Queen Elizabeth I kept one, and Bill Gates keeps one. So typically the way a Commonplace Book will be approached is you'll decide what you want to do with it. So when I teach creative writing, I usually encourage my students to do 2 things with a Commonplace Book. 1, put in quotes that they like that are about writing, and 2, copy by hand a piece of writing that they love. So if they're reading a book and they think a passage is really beautiful or it really moves them in some way, they can copy it in there with the information about what book it's from, who the author is, where they found it. So when we talk about it as a repository for knowledge, it can be any set of knowledge that you're interested in keeping hold of. And a nice thing if you are a letter writer is if you start gathering quotes that you find really interesting or thought-provoking, those could be a great way to start a letter. So write a letter to a friend, share one of the quotes, and then say, this is what I'm thinking it means, right? So slow down what you would do maybe if you could go to a coffee shop and have a conversation, do it by mail, do it by letter. So today we're doing things a little differently in that I'm going to have prompts for each of these different kinds of journals right after I talk about them, rather than holding all of the prompts till the end. So here's the prompt for you for today. So in your journal right now, free write, excuse me, or make a list about your interests, your projects, whatever it is that you think you might like to start compiling your notes on, what you read about a certain subject. And select a few to focus on, select a few to focus on for gathering quotes from reading, films, research that will help deepen your pleasure in and knowledge about these interests and projects. So for today, I just want you to brainstorm what those interest projects might be. And, nothing is off the table. So let's take about 5 minutes to go through that. And if you all finished earlier, you can let me know.
And Beverly, we have a question from one of our participants, if it makes sense to do our spiral exercise first before we start writing.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely forgot to put that in. So yes, usually we do that when we start writing all at the end, right? So yeah, do your spiral and pin yourself to the place. Thank you, Karen. So we'll take about a minute more. Okay, go ahead and get yourself to a good pausing place. And I would love to hear if anybody has anything on their list that they think is interesting or that they'd like to share. I'd love to hear them. Of course, you don't have to do that, but you're welcome to. Okay, I will say that I tend to keep a commonplace book on writing craft, on writing inspiration. So I'll share the first quote in my current commonplace book is from Joan Didion. And it says, "When I talk about pictures in my mind, I'm talking quite specifically about images that shimmer around the edges. You just lie low and let them develop." And I loved that because of the photography references and just a really fun way to think about images. What questions do you have about the Commonplace book? I don't want to leave it until I know that everybody feels confident about what it entails.
It's something that I've always thought about. I learned something this week that the way I journal, for the journals for myself, are really boring. and they don't have to be just one thing. It can be so many bits and pieces, and it's like I don't know why I've been in such a rut for like 30 years. It was huge to figure out that I don't have to do it the way I've always done it, which brought the question of how do you find stuff later on? Because that, for me, it's just once it's down, it's lost.
Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure at the end. But that just makes me really happy that you're seeing there are so many ways you can approach it, and it can be different every day. You could journal in a different way every day if that's what you want to do. All right, so just know if you do decide to keep a commonplace book, you're joining a long, long history of writers and thinkers who have done the same. The
And
next
Beverly, did you see there's another question again from
no.
Karen? Karen asked a question and wanted to know if it's always been called a commonplace book, or is there another name for it?
There's a name in Italian, I believe, and I can, when you're writing something else, I can look it up for you, Karen. But that is in English, it's typically been called a commonplace book. But I can find a link for you that will give you some of the history of it. And Holly, thank you for sharing when there are questions. When I'm sharing my screen, it is difficult to see them, so I appreciate that.
Exactly. You're welcome. I'm happy to do it.
Thanks. Okay, and please put any questions that you want in the chat and we will get to them. The next kind of journal that I want to talk about is a field journal. And this is a record of usually it's nature observations through words and drawings. You don't need to use a fancy journal. So you see this one is just in a composition book, and it's just a table where the person is looking at different fish. And your sketches can be as rough or refined as you like. So if there's anything, if you're a hiker, if you like to fish, whatever the case may be, if there's something that you do that gets you outside, you might consider whether you want to bring something like a small field journal, which I'm going to hold up. Let me unmute here. I'm going to hold up these little field notebooks. I'm not, they're not paying me to plug these. I just love them because they fit in your pocket, right? They're really tiny. You could see, here's my phone. So it's about the size of a phone. And they come with different kinds of inside. This is a to-do list one or a checklist one. You can get them with grids. So you can keep a field notebook and really record whatever your observations are when you're outside. So anything that you're interested in, a field notebook is a really good way for you to kind of track things. Last spring, right after we were told to stay home for the pandemic, I started a sort of field journal where once it got warm enough and things started growing in my yard, for 100 days, I drew pictures of whatever was in my yard. So all the little weeds, and I would learn about them. So I created a little field journal around my yard, which was really fun and interesting. And I feel more connected to the place because of that. So there are lots of ways to keep a field journal. So here's another writing prompt for you. And you could do any of these that you want, or you could do all of them. We'll take a few minutes and you can do whichever ones you want. But these are some ideas to help you think about whether this might be something you're interested in. So in your journal, you can write about a natural phenomenon you witnessed and attend to the sensory details. So maybe you've seen the Northern Lights, or you were at the beach during a thunderstorm or something like that. So anything that you want to describe, so something that you want to get on the page. And attending to those sensory details helps you kind of be a citizen scientist, right? What was it really like? What did I notice? And then you could also write to these questions. When do you spend time in nature? If you do, what do you like to do? Where do you like to go? What interests you about nature? So are you interested in plants and birds, small animals, bodies of water? And then a third prompt is for you to tap into your inner citizen scientist. So what's one experiment you'd like to undertake in your field journal? Why? How might you go about it? And just to prime the pump for that one, I don't know if you're like me, but I have some bird feeders that are out until the bears come around. And I love to see how many different types of birds we get. And so it's kind of like an experiment for me to see. I know a scientist would never agree with me calling this an experiment, but it's a project, I guess. So just tracking what I see, drawing, sketching what I see, those kinds of things can really give your field journal purpose and then create a wealth of information for you that can be really interesting. So again, you can focus on any one of these 3 questions or all of them. And I'm going to give you I'll give you 7 minutes for this one. So take about 1 more minute. And get yourself to a good stopping place. Would anybody like to share anything that they came up with for a field journal that they might be interested in doing, or any other ideas that came to them during this? Yeah, honey.
I did, because after watching last night's class at the library on birds, it gave me a better understanding of their behavior, and I just have so much more interest now in going outside when even in the winter or when the weather's nice, and observing birds. And I was she talked about bird houses and keeping them. I never even thought about this, that you have to clean the birdhouse. You can't just let the bird go into the birdhouse. You have to clean it with bleach and water and make sure that it's clean for them. I just learned so much, and I thought, that's something I've never done. So that might be my next experiment.
I love that idea.
So it might be something everybody might want to look on the recording. I think Holly recorded it last night, and I'm going to watch it again because I have to watch everything again so I can reinforce everything I learned. So that's what I would do.
That's terrific. I think that's a great idea. I wanted to share with you. So I hike in McLean's Game Refuge pretty much every day with my husky. And there are things that because I do it year after year, I've observed. So I know I'm going to see skunk cabbage right around now. And I mark it down in a journal that I keep, a daily journal that I keep. So I can always look back at, last year it was on the 29th, I saw the first one, and I saw the first skunk cabbage a couple days ago this year. So even those kind of little details can help you create a stronger sense of place and of belonging to the place and understanding a place. Karen shared that she wrote about an experience she had with birds. We seem to be a bird bunch here. Thank you, Karen. Oh, and I wanted to show you. So sometimes it's as simple as something like that in a field journal. Like this is what I was observing, was how the kind of ground around a bridge that I go over, how different that was looking than it used to look. So I was just sketching, and I did a little detail of something here and wrote some notes on it. So that was done at home later, but I took pictures so that I like working in watercolor. So I did pictures so I could do that later. Yes. Holly, that's true. There's a lot of great bird pictures on the local Facebook pages. We are lucky in our town to have some really amazing photographers who share their work really generously. All right. Questions about field journals? All right. This is kind of like a speed dating through 4 kinds of journal thing. So I'm sorry for the speed, but I just wanted to give you a lot of things to consider and consider using. So let me share my screen again. And we're going to look next at travel journals. So even if you're not able to travel anytime soon, it's worth noting that research shows that just planning a trip can be restorative, never mind actually going on it. So even planning can be beneficial to you. So if you have to be an armchair traveler, or maybe you're somebody who doesn't actually like to travel, but you like thinking about going other places, here are some journal ideas for you. You could list every place you'd like to go and why. You could plan a dream trip itinerary. You could glue or tape into your journal literature about your destination. You could keep notes from your travel research. You could map out your packing list. So I am going to give you a few minutes to, you could do any of these, but I think the one that makes sense to do in this space right now is to list every place you'd like to go and why. And I want you to write fast and furious. So let's keep this to 2 minutes. So that first prompt. Okay, I'll give you about 20 more seconds. Okay, so, you know, even if you can't travel right now, you can still play around with travel. But when you do get to travel again, if that's something you're interested in, here are some ideas for what you could keep in your travel journal. And I've done all of these, and think it's just a really nice record to have when you come back from a trip. So I usually will do a packing list. I like to be a minimal packer, so I like everything has to fit in a backpack or it doesn't get to go with me. So I usually will put in some blocks on a page, and I'll draw the pieces of clothing and the items that I'm bringing with me. I also like to keep my travel expenditures in my travel journal. And I have to say, when I look back at a trip I took in 2001 to Ireland, it's so fun to see what things cost and what I was spending my money on that trip. You know, it's really nice when you go back into it to see that. It's fun to do coin rubbings from your destination, especially, you know, if you're going to several different places. So if you're in the EU, you know, everything's kind of the same after a while. But if you're traveling to other locations, it can be really fun to have that. I love to write meal descriptions, especially if I'm someplace where I'm eating some really good food. I also like to write my daily itineraries and reflections. So when I travel, I often have, okay, today, these are the things I'm hoping to see. But then, you know, if you are somebody who then lets whimsy take you along your way, it's fun to see what you actually did versus what you thought you would do that day and kind of reflect on what you saw. I like to do sketches. That first slide that I showed you about travel journals, I don't do them as cartoony as that, but I do like to sketch things in my journal. And I love to keep ephemera. So I tape in the metro tickets, whatever, you know, receipts, whatever it is, that little bits of paper or interesting things that I can tape or glue into my journal. So those are some fun things to keep into it. And then here's a prompt. And, you know, it's not, the first one isn't too different than the first one on the last slide, but, you know, it could be something you want to do is just list out your dream destinations. I think this one would be a lot of fun. So recall one of the best meals you've eaten and attend to all the sensory details, recollect any conversation that you can. If you remember, describe what you wore, what you ate, and why was it one of the best meals for you. You could pick one of your dream destinations and write about why you want to travel there. And you could describe an outing you've had recently, even if, like last Saturday, I went to the library to pick up some books, and that was a really fun outing for me. So you could describe an outing you've had recently as if you were visiting the town where you live, so as if you were a stranger. So I will let you choose one of those that piques your interest. And I will give you, let's say about 5 minutes. So this might be something you want to come back to later. So take about 1 more minute. And get yourself to a good stopping place. You look like you had fun. Will you tell us which prompt you chose?
Um, yeah, it was a meal in Florence.
Oh.
But what made me laugh is that all these memories come back. All this memory is just overwhelming me. And I just am just deliciousing it.
Good.
Just about a meal in Florence. This was about 4 years ago. We'd gone on a walking tour and it was lunchtime and we just went into this place that just looked friendly. It just looked really friendly. And there was on the board, it was tripa. And I knew it was tripe. And my husband just almost lost his non-existent lunch at that point. And I said, I'm never going to have a chance to eat tripe again. And it was just one of the most fantastic meals I've ever had. And that was fine. I remembered that. But then I remembered that there was this hand cranked thing for cutting prosciutto. and I had completely forgotten that. And it was really a masterful invention. And then we saw that every restaurant had one of these things for slicing prosciutto. So that was my memory of that.
What fun. And it's like you get to travel twice, right? Once when you actually did it, and now you can travel through your journal and through your memories.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to share about their writing experience? Honey.
I did write about our trip out west last year to the national parks. And we because it was our big anniversary, I won't say which one, big one. we with 6 other people, we took a small plane ride, which my heart was in my throat the whole time, through the Grand Canyon. And it was just spectacular.
Oh.
And I was scared to death to go. I really was scared. I made sure my journal, everything was all organized, and if something happened, but it truly was fascinating, and I'm glad I did it. So
That's great. So yeah, if you haven't kept a travel journal while you travel, this is the perfect time to go back into your memories and get them down. I kept, a few years back, we had a staycation year, so we weren't going anywhere at all. And so I kept a visual and written journal. So that's my husband sleeping on the porch. And this day I just did things I was noticing. So the dog in some sunlight, a flower from the yard. Another sketch, just playing around. It was summertime, so I did all the good veggies that we had gotten at the farm stand. And then since I have some very interesting things in my town, I went and painted Cossett Library, and I wrote about how it was the hottest day of the year. At least it felt it out there. So, you know, we weren't even going anywhere, and I was able to get some pictures down and write some notes. And so I always remember that week at home that we had that ended up being really fun. So let me share my screen one last time and we'll look at my final idea for you.
And excuse me for interrupting, but we did have one more quick question from the audience here. Karen was interested to know what type of pad you were using for your staycation journal. I think I got that
so
right.
this is just a, I don't know what the brand is, but it's just, I like multimedia journals when I know I want to paint in them. So if I know I want to tape things in or anything like that, that way they can take water from watercolors, they can take some glue. So those are what I usually go for. All right. So the last idea I have for you is to keep a themed journal. And it doesn't mean one journal, one theme. Instead, you can select areas of your life you want to explore or ideas you want to explore and kind of figure out what keeps you writing. So you could do this monthly. You could select 12 areas that you want to explore, and each month focus anytime you're going to write in your journal, write on that theme in that one particular notebook. You could do a weekly one. So you could either have 4 things or 52 things and cycle through them. My favorite is to do a daily one. So I make a list of 31 things and I rotate through them once a month. I don't do it all the time, but it's really productive to see month to month. Okay, this is what I'm thinking about photography, or this is what I'm thinking about what I'm reading. So I might have different themes. I'm sorry, my dogs are about to go.
It's good to hear them. That's lovely to hear them.
Why don't you take 2 minutes and do this prompt, and I'll be right back. Okay, I want to give us enough time for responding to some questions that we had. So I'm going to say get to a good stopping place. And if I know that was kind of rushed, so if you have questions about that, you can always email me and I'll drop my email in the chat so you can reach out to me for more information about that one. There was a question about how do you organize? If you're using your journal for a lot of different things, how do you organize? And I have a few different ideas for you. So one is, if you start to notice that there are several different approaches you want to take, I often use Moleskine notebooks. I like them a lot. I like the paper. It takes a lot of different kinds of pens. You might put tabs in like this. I don't know if you can see that, but it's my regular journal, my Commonplace, my, I call it My Place. So that's kind of a field notebook. And then the last one is a reading list. So I track what I've been reading. So you could just put tabs in and they're movable. So if you find you need more pages, you can push things around. So that's a pretty flexible way. The other thing you'll see is that I number the pages of a moleskin, so you can index a little bit, and you could do that as you go. So if there's themes that you're noticing, you can just have an index where you put what that theme is, and then whenever you've written towards that, you can note down the pages on which you're doing that. So that's how bullet journaling typically works, is that you just keep going from the start to the end of your notebook. But what you do is notice, okay, I'm using this page to plan out next month. So you could just index that, and then you'll know what page to go to. Does that help?
Yeah. But after 3 years of doing that, how do you then go back to your stack and pull things out?
So I will say, like, travel journals, I usually keep as their own thing. So
Mhm.
they're a separate beast. And if I have a field notebook for a particular project, that's its own separate thing. If I'm just noodling around, then it gets just placed in with everything else. So I would say that what I tend to do is flip through, and if there's anything really valuable that I'm like, I want to pursue this idea that I put into my journal more, I get it into a new place. So I'll put it in whatever my current journal is. So like at the end of the year, I might look through all my morning pages. So I write 3 longhand pages every day, and I would highlight things that are worth pursuing. And if it's just airing of grievances, which it often is, because that's the appropriate place to put them, as Honey noted, then I don't need to worry about those. I'll highlight what I think is a real idea that I want to pursue, and then I can transfer that into a current notebook. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So it's a little bit of work. It's a little bit of organization. I happen to like that kind of work. If you don't, then, you can always maybe even put Post-its or tabs that just have a word or two to remind you what that particular section's about, or what those pages are about, so you can go back to them.
Okay, yeah, I kind of did that. I've got a notebook here of things that were in my journals, my meditation journals.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's almost like, if you don't feel like working, you can do arts and crafts.
Yes, exactly.
And, it hasn't been terribly successful in organizing me, but it's a start. It's a place to start for this project.
Yeah, I think every project is often feels new, where you have to reconsider, how am I going to organize it? How am I going to, what do I need it through my organization? So I have confidence you'll figure that out.
Thank you.
I just want to share my screen one more time. I know we're at 2 o'clock, but I just want to show you the document that Holly will be sending to you. And so I can give you access to the slides from today so that you have all those prompts on them. If you want to join my email list, you can just send me an email with your request, and this will be on the document Holly's sending you. It's b13armywilliams@gmail.com. And I don't send out a newsletter that often, but when I do, it's usually got prompts in it and writing inspiration related things. The homework, if you choose to do it, you've got the whole course's prompts, so all 4 weeks of prompts. You could select one of the Commonplace book ideas you generated and gather content for it. You could design an experiment or a project for your field journal, which Honey already has, I think. So she's hopefully going to start tracking her birds a little bit. If you've traveled in the past but not kept a journal, you can see how much of your adventure you can recreate in words, drawings, collages, photos. You can start a themed journal. And then I gave you 4 more springboards. So I'd given you some of those in the first week. So just to have something a little different in there. again, Holly will email you all this, the link to this and to the slides so that you have access to them. Are there any questions before we say farewell? Honey?
I just want to share this because this is just touches my heart. When my 6-year-old granddaughter goes on a hike and she and her bike, she has on her back a backpack. And I always say to my daughter, where is she going on the bicycle with her backpack? And she's been doing this for quite some time. She has her field journal in her backpack and her colored pencils. So she, you know, she takes, they have to stop on the way. And when we've been with them, we stop at a little pond. She has to get out her journal and she starts, you know, drawing pictures and, you know, writing some things. And I'm thinking, how fabulous is that? 6 years old. And
I love it.
Journal. So Holly was just so kind to look up field journals where I could get some and specifically send her some that say field journal and some colored pencils. So never you start young. I think that's great.
I think that's terrific too. And you know, I started keeping notebooks when I was not much older than her. I think I was about 7 when I started keeping my notebook. So I've been journaling a long time and it's so fun. I don't have all of them anymore, but you know, it's so fun to think back to what I used to enjoy doing in them. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate you being here and I just love thinking of you playing in your journals, and I hope that we get to play in journals again together sometime.
That would be wonderful. It really would. Thank you so much, Beverly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Holly, thank you.
And
Thank you all for participating, and I hope you continue, and I'm sure we'll have Beverly back at some point for some more exciting creative writing workshops. So this has been wonderful.
Great.
I have enjoyed
I'll
it.
get an email. I'll get an email out to you with the information that Beverly is going to share. Let me make sure I have the information. Did you put that in chat, or are you going to send me something?
I'll email it to you, Holly.
Okay, sounds good to me, everybody.
Thank
Farewell. Enjoy the rest of your
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.